Many thanks for staying tuned on ADB, and this is the Market Report Show that bring you latest information about government economic policy. And today we are looking at one of the jamming policy of the government of Nigeria, particularly with reforms that they have carried out. In my introduction, I said something about reforms. That reforms are seen as a progressive, government action. But sometimes reform comes with its own problem. It comes with its own headache. And one of the reforms that the government have been able to take as a pain was unification of the FX market in Nigeria, so that we can have one market and one way of exchange of Naira to other foreign currency. That helped at the beginning, but we begin to see changes and some problem within it. So I have Mr. Tajudeen Suleiman here with me. Very good day to you, sir, and welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much. Good day to you, Mr. Folani.
Right, sir. So, Mr. Tajudeen,
yeah,
what was your assessment when you got to know about President Tinubu's economic reform? I'm going to streamline the issue of the reform, but let's take an umbrella look at the reform shortly from your side.
Thank you very much. I would like to start with the first news item that you just read. Nigeria importing food last year. I mean, that's is a paradox of our country, the paradox of the economy. Over 70% of the population are engaged in rural areas. They are supposed to be farming. But look at the country, we cannot produce what we are eating. Now, let me answer your question. And I want to take you back to what Sule Lamido Sanusi said, the former CBN governor, when he said at the beginning of the Tinubu reforms. He spoke Hausa. He was talking to Northerners who said they were feeling the pain of the reforms. And he said, look, he said the case of Nigeria is like the case of a father, the head of a household, that had no money, but was borrowing money to feed his family. And not just feed his family. His family was living large. They were slaughtering rams every day on borrowed funds. He would send them to Umrah. And our people in the north, they love to go to Umrah.
Exactly.
He would send them to Umrah. They travel everywhere on borrowed funds. Now, those who borrowed you the money, they say they want you to pay back. You cannot pay back. You cannot borrow more. He said that is the situation of Nigeria. That's the situation where we are. So there is no alternative for what this government is doing. I agree with the World Bank that said that, look, if you don't reform, if you don't do these reforms, the country is going to collapse. Since 2014, I remember, when Okonjo Iweala was the finance minister, Nigeria was already borrowing money to pay salaries of civil servants.
Now, are we done so that I can
follow up question?
Now, the follow-up question is this. One of the reforms that the president took, which I also highlighted when I introduced this particular topic, was that we unify the exchange rate.
Yes.
Then we also go after subsidy removal. But we are going to stay put on the exchange because that is the beacon of our discussion. Yeah. What was your reaction when you got to know that we have 11 to 15 exchange rate platform in Nigeria? I can give some of them. We have different exchange rates in the port. We have different exchange rates at the airport. We have different exchange rates with banks. We have different exchange rates with BOC. We even government agencies, they have their own different rates. So what was your reaction when you got to know that we are unifying all these exchange rates?
Yeah, I think I found it commendable. It was an audacious monetary action by the Central Bank of Nigeria. And I think it's commendable. It was a bold move to unify the exchange rate. That's how you can show up the value of your currency. So my opinion was that it was a necessary move.
Now, even though it was a necessary move, people found gaps. At the first instance when they implemented this policy, or all applauded it. Even my own boss applauded it. I wrote about 5 series of articles on it, but also make suggestions to the government about it, because we can't have unified exchange without a buffer that will continue to supply, a liquidity effects for the Naira to be stabilized. And those are the gaps that we identify. But on the long run, how will you say this has played out to help the Naira to be stabilized?
Yeah, I think the buffer you talked about was necessary. And unfortunately, I think we didn't have that. Okay, but the subsequent steps that the CBN has also taken has also helped to stabilize the Naira. The monetary, rise in interest rates, you know, and all the other monetary policy instruments of the government that the CBN, they have also helped to shore up the value of the Naira and make it at least, make it to stabilize recently. You understand?
Exactly.
But those things are not enough. Those things are not enough to restore the value of the Naira.
Now, talking about those things are not enough, I think one of the issues that we quickly need to address before we go deep into our discussion is this. You know, when we engage analysts, engage economists on issues of Nigeria economy, we are tempted to quickly ask them this question. Sometimes we are let go of, because of oversight, to allow our guests to tell us what is really the challenge of Nigerian economy. Because most of the time when we are talking, we're only talking about challenges that other people have talked about. But the guest himself or the analyst himself, we want to know what does he or she think about the challenge of Nigerian economy.
Frankly speaking, the challenge, what I see as our biggest challenge was what the former Director General of the Debt Management Office said. I think Abraham Wanko or something like that. He presented a paper and he said that, look, when you have a federation where states, where the subnationals, they come to Abuja every month, cap in hand, to take from the coffers, the general coffers, and then go back to their state without adding any value, without producing anything. It said that kind of economy cannot, is not a progressive economy. So our problem is structural and also political. You get it? Unless, I always say it, unless we run a true federation where we allow states to control their resources and become centers of production, okay? We can move forward. Look at every graduate in this country today. When I graduated from the university, there were only 20,000 graduates. And they told us at that time, that was 1989, they told us at that time that the Nigerian economy will not take, the private and public sector will not employ more than 10% of 20,000 graduates.
That's about 1,000 people.
You can imagine. Today we are producing over 600,000 graduates. They are either coming to Abuja or they are going to Lagos. No state can employ them because they are all just civil service. There's no production going on because states don't have access to their own resources. So this is a major problem. You look at countries like the United States where they run a true federation. That is the model of a federation. States are autonomous. They have different laws in those states. You know, some states charge taxes on certain things, some don't. You know, and they have control on their resources. So they are all competing. But states in Nigeria are not competing. They were just competing to build bridges, to build roads, things like that.
Although those bridges and roads add value to what we want in terms of the economic performance that will bring about investors' attraction and the rest of them. Yeah,
that is true. But that also brings me to the issue, the structural problem of the economy. We're not producing. That's the major problem. We're not producing. And our comparative advantage is in agriculture. But are we exploiting that potential? I remember when I was a correspondent in Kano, there was a trade delegation that came from Israel to Kano. The state government brought them for investment. They took them around the state, Kano State. That was around 2003. And after 3 days, when they were going, they addressed the press. And we asked them their impression. And the leader of the delegation said, look, he said Nigeria had no business with poverty. He said if Israel had the land mass that Kano alone has and the water bodies that Kano alone has, that they're not only going to feed Nigeria, but they will feed the whole of Africa from Kano. But these same resources that Kano has, Jigawa has, Benue has, almost every state in the country has, we are not exploiting, we're not adding value to agricultural produce. So it's a problem.
Exactly. So I really love your submission because the submission you are making tilt towards the buffoon that I talk about that will help us to liquidify Naira and stabilize it going forward. But there are questions around this economic reforms of President Tinubu. In your own thinking, are they really working as expected, or there are gaps and shortages or shortfall that the government itself have not really identified? And that's why Nigerians are complaining.
Yeah, on paper, I think the reforms are working. Reforms are working on paper. But over 72% of Nigerians are engaged in the informal sector. So they don't see what we are seeing. They don't earn salary. They depend on the liquidity in the system to survive. So these people, and they are the largest number of Nigerians, to these people, the government is not doing anything. But we know that the government is doing something. But because of inflation, I think is the biggest problem that the government has to and I think the CBN is doing everything to actually curtail that. In fact, they are doing everything that a CBN can do
to curtail inflation. And interestingly, our inflation has dropped from 24% to 23%.
Yes, not 23%. So, which shows that it is working. You get it? It is working. The GDP too is growing. It's expanding. It shows that the economy is expanding. But are we expanding in the right sectors? Like I've mentioned, agriculture. Agriculture, if there is investment in agro-business, look at Benue, look at Naira, look at all these states. Mangoes are just wasting. Oranges are wasting. Ginger, no, we don't export. No storage facilities. These are areas that government need to look at and try to find a way to intervene so that we can start becoming a productive economy, you know, increasing our export. There's nothing wrong if we export agricultural produce or finished product. If we have agro-industries alone can give us more than $6 billion. It can add more than $6 billion to the GDP. Just agro-business alone. We also need investment in sectors like in the energy sector. For instance, we can leverage on solar. It can add more than $3 billion to the GDP. And of course, you know the number of people that will also be employed in the process. So these are the things that can actually show up the value of the Naira. When we start doing more of export and not import, then we'll start to see changes.
I think I agree with you to a greater extent that agricultural sector is very, very huge, and we need to embrace that to be able to show up the value of Naira and the rest of them. Now, let's now take a look at the aspect of our bulk of our discussion. But I know many viewers will be asking, well, we're talking reform, but we still want to talk about Naira. One of the reform of the government was on Naira to be stabilized, and that's why they brought about the unification of the entire exchange rate. And that's why we focus on that first, to understand Nigerian government, you know, reforms in the area of exchange of Naira to other currency. Now, many argue in this regard that the outcome of our diagnosis of our economic challenge is not getting the right prescription to handle it. Do you agree with that assertion going forward?
Well, I think the prescription is right, but perhaps we took more than we could chew at the same time. Perhaps if the subsidy was not removed at the time they were floating the Naira, maybe the pressure wouldn't have been as much.
Or they put it the other way around.
Or the other way around, exactly. Or put it the other way around. So that's one of the things that I think the government, I'm sure they also will.
They are rethinking it. Because a lot of people have argued that the diagnosis is quite very interesting. We know that this is the suffering Nigerians are facing, but the prescription of what the government will do becomes something conflicting going forward.
I totally agree with you on that.
Away from that, there are also this view about CBN policies. You know, we have the unification policies from floating in Naira. There are other policies that CBN have brought in place, which I know you are aware. I read some of your piece recently about CBN human capital, you know, how they did it. But in your own understanding, all those policies being put in place, how do you assess them in terms of their working and their helping the Naira in one way or the other?
Frankly speaking, like I said before, the CBN is doing what the CBN should do, what the central bank should do, because since Cardoso came in, I've started to see the CBN in a different light, you know. He has brought some level of professionalism to it, you know, even starting from the way he tried to make the bureaucracy of the CBN leaner, you know, so that there can be more efficiency, you know, and all that. And all the reforms they are put in place, you know that these are well thought out reforms. Is it the management of the forex that we want to talk about? The rules that they made, the Nigerian Forex Code, all these things have brought transparency into the foreign exchange market. And that's why we're even where we are today. Maybe the situation would have been worse. You know, maybe Naira would have been like 2,000 to $1 or something by now. So we still have to say, we still have to be grateful that these reforms are there. You know, because it's like, again, let me go back to what the former CBN governor said. He said Nigeria was heading towards the precipice. You understand? And he said he was warning the government at that time, as the Buhari administration. It started from the Jonathan administration. He said he was warning them at that time, but nobody listened to him. But now we have entered the valley.
To come out of the valley
now. Yes. Now we are struggling to come out of the valley now. That's the situation. So the CBN actually deserves our support. They are doing everything. I doubt if they are even sleeping.
Cardoso is not sleeping. But definitely Cardoso may not be sleeping because the pressure that is on them. Let's even take one of the issues that arose when Cardoso took over in 2023, October precisely. The BDC issue. They giving them $30,000, $40,000 before CBN now limited it to, is it $10,000 per week? It became an issue. But I know you are also doing a lot of write-up report in that regard. So, but how did you see BDC coming? Because a lot of us who are economists have looked at BDC like a parasite, who government just bring in to pave way for some of their cronies, associates, and the rest of them. Because in other countries that we speak today, BDC are worked through the terrorism sector. Although I've had the opportunity of interviewing Dr. Alhaji Gwadabe, the chairman of BDC Association of Nigeria, and he explicitly says so many brilliant submissions about BDC. But looking at BDC critically, do you still see them helping the Naira in one way to stabilize?
They are going to help the Naira if the CBN is able to fully implement the reforms in that sector. You know, now they are recapitalizing.
Exactly. I understand. Well.
So if they will be able to support the system with the capitalization. The same thing that is going on with the deposit money banks. They are also capitalizing. The whole idea is to strengthen the financial sector, you know, so that more money will come in into the system, and then foreign reserve can go up, can start to go up, and then once that begins to go up, we'll see that the Naira will also react, you know, positively to those kind of things. So I think the CBN is on the right trajectory with the BDC, because these are. Do you know how many people are employed in that sector?
I understand. When Gwadabe was here, he talks about the multiplier effect of BDC operation in Nigeria. Yes,
there will be a riot if you say
BDC should be cut off.
It will be cut off. You know, there's going to be a riot. It's just like this fuel thing, this black market fuel. I remember a governor was saying in the north that if you ban black market, that there will be riot in the state because that's what most of the youths are doing.
Exactly.
You know, but that is not to say that if it's not right, we should not correct it. Exactly. But in the case of the BDC, I think it can be institutionalized, and if they are well regulated, they can actually help the economy.
And talking about well-regulated, CBN on its own put a lot of, the FS code that you mentioned is very, very interesting, very full of, you know, ideas. Then we also remember the Bloomberg matching that CBN introduced late last year, followed by the FS code. And other policies are coming because according to Cardoso, they are going to implement and initiate several other policies. But then they look at another critical issue that economists normally ask CBN. They say the forex ecosystem in Nigeria is not liquidified, that there is not enough forex that is going around, and that's why Naira have these shortages and the rest of them. Is that the fact, or but because CBN have been seen to be pushing more of this liquidity into the system?
You mean foreign exchange liquidity?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, where we are today, what is our foreign reserve today? About 39 billion?
39 billion. It dropped to 38.
Yes.
But I'm told that recently it rose to 39.
It was because of the reform that the CBN embarked on. That's why we're even able to get there. Otherwise, what is our export, what is the balance of trade that we have? with our trading partners. Do we have trade surpluses?
That's a big question, because CBN has been asking questions around that particular angle.
Yes. So you cannot divorce this from all the other fiscal issues that we have in the country. So the CBN has to be, what the CBN is doing has to be complemented by what the government is also doing. And I'm sure the government is doing it best. But there are extraneous factors too, which are
beyond the government and
beyond anybody's control.
And that external factor that you just mentioned now is fuel importation. Because at a time in this country, CBN was doling out dollar. Although the Cardoso government is also still giving them a dollar, because I could recall that end of 2024, over $18 billion was spent on fuel importation. So how can we do away with this?
Well, I thought we were going to do away with it with the with the Dangote
refinery, but we are still having a backlog of issues.
We are still having issues. Well, I'm happy that more refineries are coming on stream. By the time more refineries come and we have competition, already we see what competition can do with the pricing of products. Today fuel is like 800. Some people said for 880,
860. Some are selling 900.
So if we have more competition, I'm sure it's going to come down. When they started, how much were they? We were buying for 1,000 something. Now we're going to, just within less than a year, we're going to 800 and something. So if we have more competition in the sector, I think government should do everything to encourage more investment in that sector. And in other sectors of the economy, like energy that we have talked about, like infrastructure that we have talked about, these are special sectors that government has to focus. And I think the CBN is also thinking that way, because I know that they are encouraging the banking sector, to extend credit to certain sectors of the economy that they consider key to the reforms of the administration. So I hope that all this the reform will need time. It's not something that we can start to see the result.
The immediate result.
The immediate result. Like I told you, this economy is an informal economy.
Exactly.
It's an informal economy. So unless you put Nigerians back to work, if there is energy, and a barber can go and do, Nigerians are very resourceful people.
Exactly.
They can do business and contribute to the GDP.
Now, talking about contribution to the GDP, and a recent survey by CBN by itself carried out a survey on issue of inflation and interest rate. Now, when the CBN carried out this survey, 65% of Nigerian population supported that we should reduce interest rate. You talk about, bank giving out money to people, and 65% of our population are saying, please, CBN, reduce interest rate. What would be your take on this? Because citizens are already saying that CBN, please reduce your interest rate, and currently our interest rate is 27.50%.
Yes.
But on the bank side, it's about 32% to 35%, depending on the bank you want to go and borrow money from. That's what they will do. So what would be your take on this? Citizens calling on CBN to reduce interest rate.
It's a very dicey situation for the CBN because this hike in interest rate is also going to help to bring foreign direct investment into the country. And we need that to show up our foreign exchange reserves. We need that. So it's now an issue of how to balance that with the interests of Nigerians. To me, I think that's the challenge. And I'm not going to, I think the task actually is for the government now to do certain things to alleviate to boost the purchasing power of Nigerians. If they can, they should do. Like by now, I expected that we're going to have mass transportation systems. Subsidized transportation. The president promised us.
Exactly, about 3,000 CNG buses.
Yeah, where are they? I have not seen anyone.
Maybe we'll ask the governors, because the government have been doing CNG initiative all over the country.
Yes, the governors are not doing anything. And I think we should be holding the governors more accountable. Everybody is just facing the president. The president is a federation. You know, when the president declared the state of emergency in Rivers, people were saying that he has no power to do that. But when it comes to economic issues, everybody will be blaming the president.
And the president said he has to protect national
critical asset. I support that declaration 100%. Rivers is not like any other state for Nigeria. We're in a very dire economic situation, and we cannot allow that kind of thing to happen.
Exactly. Now let's also further go deep into this Naira poor performance that we are witnessing in the last 3 weeks. Because in the last 3 weeks, we are seeing Naira floating between 1,500, 1,460, 1,500. It comes back, 1,500 to 1,450, 1,600. It comes back again. It's just floating, going up and down. But as of today, it is now 1,530 Naira. But people are calling for concerted effort. You made mention of the government side. And when we talk about the government side, as to the CBN side, we're talking about the fiscal policy of the government. When are we going to see a concerted, married policy, fiscal policy and monetary policy? At a time, I could remember last year when Yemi Cardoso was reading out their communique about what they expect from the fiscal policy. He said most of the challenges that Naira is facing is from the physical end. Pressures like lack of energy that you talk about, poor transportation system and the rest of them. So when are we going to see a married fiscal and monetary policy? I know you are not a government spokesperson.
Yes, no,
I'm just...
Yes. I'm hoping that I'm not a government spokesperson.
Exactly.
But I'm a supporter of the reforms of this government because I think it's well-intentioned. And what I urge them to do, more is, like I've said before, try to make targeted intervention. Make targeted intervention that can weaken the pressure, the inflationary pressure on the citizens. Because at the end of the day, the purpose of government is the welfare of the people. So this is the issue. The government, I've not seen many of these welfare interventions. I'm not talking about all these conditional transfer,
cash transfer, sharing of palliative rights.
Those things don't work here. Because the data, how do you reach those people? Some people will just be feeding fat on these things. Look at a recent report that we read. A state governor in the north, the government palliatives, the money that was given by the federal government for palliatives for the state to use to deliver palliatives to the people. They have stolen over 70 billion from that money. The secretary to the government is with the
EFCC right now.
He was arrested 2 days ago. And the accountant general. So these are the problem. So why can't the government do these things? You know, of course there are some things that the government cannot do. For instance, like we said, like transportation. You cannot go and set up transport this in every state. The state government has to do that.
Exactly.
State government has to invest in agriculture. Have to invest in agriculture, you know, so that we can start producing and exporting. So these are some of the issues that I think the government need to face more. And the federal government, they have to do their part. The Minister of Finance promised that they are going to work together with the CBN. And I think the friendship between the CBN governor, the Minister of Finance, and the budget minister, and the other members of the economic team, I think it should help them to synergize. Should help them to synergize. There should be, the government has to do more in terms of ensuring that the economy expands more.
Very good. And you know, there's this particular question that rose up among we economists, and we tried as much as possible to expand the conversation around it. And we said, is tax reform part of the way to marry fiscal policy together?
Tax reform?
Yes. you know, the tax reform is playing a critical role in Nigerian economy right now as we speak. If it passed through National Assembly and it's been signed, should we see it as one of those expectations that will marry fiscal and monetary policy?
Exactly. I think it's a positive if it is signed. Those who are opposing it before, they have all recanted. By the time they went through it, they have all recanted. I think the problem with the subnationals, the states, is that they are not ready to challenge themselves. And that is what the tax reform is going to do. It's going to make you look inward to start saying, how can you generate this? How can we expand our own local economy so that we can get more taxes, more money. Exactly. So that is what I think. This tax reform is going to stimulate the economy of the country. The general economy is going to stimulate it.
And we should see it as a way of also a married fiscal policy with monetary
policy. Certainly. It's a marriage of fiscal policies with monetary policy. It's now, a positive marriage.
So let's begin to look at solutions now. But before we go to I ask you to begin to provide solutions to some of the challenges we have identified. Why is Naira performing poorly and the rest of them? CBN did something recently. They bring about innovative of the human capital resource base. Can you share a light on what really happened and how do you see that will impact on the outing of CBN under Cardoso in the next, I don't know, maybe we'll be there for 5 years or someone, it will change or it will go. But within this period that we are, how will that impact on CBN as well as the Naira going forward? The human capital innovation that CBN has brought to bear. Apart from macroeconomic policy they are bringing, they're also bringing human capital innovation into their forum.
Yeah, human capital innovation is necessary because these days economies are knowledge driven.
Exactly.
Economies are knowledge driven. It's not. We have advanced. So human capital development is an essential part of economic reforms. The other countries are doing it. Look at the Bank of England that I quoted in my article. In fact, it's their number one priority. It's the number one priority because these are people who are thinking for others. They are thinking for all of us. They are thinking for all of us. It's the same. They recruit the best. They recruit the best manpower in the system. So if the CBN can also go that route, I know that they have encumbrances because of the political situation in the country. I know there will be political interference. So I think the CBN on its own, if it is supported by the government, I think the initiative is going to be great for the economy and it's going to help us to get out of the wood.
Exactly. And the reason why I ask that question is that there is no institution or agency of government that will not require intelligent individuals, men and women, all together working for them. Because if not, there will be challenges. Because most of the policies that we talk about that the CBN need to bring about, it has to come from the thinking of people that will be working there. Now, another solution that I want you to quickly provide is, what is your advice to the federal government of Nigeria? Because the federal government need advice on how to ensure that Naira remains stabilized.
Well, what should I advise government? I don't know. People have advised the government enough.
You are always in the field, knowing what is happening. Although I've read through some of your articles.
Nigerians are suffering actually. So the government has to. It's investment too. Government has to invest in key sectors, and urgently. It's not something that. Look, I don't know why we're having energy problem. We should not be having energy problem. Look at the north. We can tap solar. We can tap solar instead of having a national grid that will transfer power from south to the north. And saboteurs will go and break the
tower and the rest of them.
Yes, and then there will be blackout for a week. No country grows that way. There should be decentralization of the national grid. The Minister of Power was saying the other time that they are considering regional grids. I think that would be a great idea. I don't know whether it's just his own idea or it's a policy paper. I don't know. But he said it. But I think that is what the government should do. In fact, I thought that was what they were going to do. We should have a regional grid, so as to address this issue of incessant grid collapses. you know. So that is important. If we can address energy issues, if we can address power, and we address agro-business, power agro-business, oh God, you are going to see the multiplier effect of this in the system.
Exactly. And not just on the system, but specifically Naira stability.
Yeah, and Naira stability.
Because
exactly.
we will do less of importation of some of those things.
Of course, we are going to import less. There are things we should be producing here. The other day I went to the market, I wanted to buy, I wanted to use ATM. And then the owner of the shop was selling bricklayer materials, like these things they used to plaster houses.
Okay. The messy plate.
You know, that plate. And I said, oh, so we're producing this thing. He said, producing what? He said, they're imported from China. I couldn't believe it. These are things that even artisans here can do. So look at the kind of things we spend money we spend our foreign exchange to do.
Okay. Now, less than 1 minute before we go, what is your advice to the current CBN, headship, and the management? Because they need our advice. We need to guide them on some of the things they are doing.
I think they should not rest on their hours. They should continue to brainstorm for the rest of us. They are doing well. They are on the right track. But they must never close their eyes. And they should continue to put pressure on the fiscal authorities to do the right thing. That's my advice.
It's a very good advice to them, because even CBN itself complains bitterly that there's a disconnection between the fiscal policy and the monetary policy. But here we are, Tajudeen efforts to understand that there should be a concerted effort between the two policies to come together. I can't appreciate you enough, but thank you for coming on the show. And it's quite insightful that you have brought a perspective, a deeper perspective, from the editorial boardroom to the TV station like this. Thank you so much for being part of our show today.
Thank you very much.
And we hope that when we call you the next time, you'll make yourself available.
I'll certainly make myself available.
I've been speaking with Tajudeen Suleiman, who is a veteran editorial financial reporter. He has covered CBN, covered several of the financial institutions, and you understand the perspective of what is happening to Nigeria, particularly why Naira is performing poorly. And he has efforts also provide solutions to it at this point in time. I want to say a very big thank you to many of you that stay tuned watching ADBN and staying glued to watch the market report. We're in and out every week, Monday to Friday. And I want to say right now, we appreciate you all. You can also join our social media group by watching most of our programs and other development issues that will be raising news and the current affairs on ADBN. This is the size of our show today. From me and my crew, we are saying enjoy the rest of your day.